Hello, everybody. We are here with another edition of our Facebook Q&A, but this one's a special one. It is also with our Heart Talks group, which is another group that does sort of cardiac-focused conversations. So we're bringing them together, and we are talking about complex kids and education. And what that specifically means today is that we're talking about navigating IEPs, which are individualized education plans, and 504 plans for children with special healthcare needs. And I'm here with these two lovely ladies. They're going to talk all about it with us today. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the comments and we will get them to these wonderful ladies. So let's start by introducing yourselves.
Hi, I'm Megan Comito. I am one of the teachers here. I'm a teacher and reentry specialist here at Phoenix Children's Hospital.
And my name is Nanette Salasic, and I work at Raising Special Kids, providing family support and education. I volunteer here at Phoenix Children's Hospital in the Family Advisory Council, but my most important job is I'm a mother of 6 children, and I have a daughter with spina bifida. She's the one that really brought us to PCH.
Great. Well, it's so lovely to have you guys here with us. Thank you. Let's just jump right in. Where do we even begin with these education plans?
So this is a question we get asked frequently. Certainly, the way that we usually approach it is we try to tailor to each family and find out where they're at and if they have anything already in place. So usually when I meet a family, it depends on is this a new diagnosis, a new illness, a new injury? Is this something chronic? Is it changing over time and we need to reevaluate and look at what's already in place? So those are some of the questions I would ask early on. And then if it looks like it's going to be a chronic illness, one of the first pieces that we typically do outside of, we have a family sign what's called a release of information, or an ROI, and that allows us to talk to the school and make sure that they know that we are working with the family and they're here at PCH. After we do that, if this is a chronic illness, we'll move on to what's called a medical certification or a chronic illness form. And that really is something that is completed by the physician and goes on file at the school and makes it so that if the child is absent and it's related to the illness, that that can't be counted against them. So they would have time to make up their work a reasonable amount of time. It would explain like physical limitations with PE or walking around the school, kind of just explains the diagnosis with some detail from the physician. And that is a great starting place. And sometimes that's all a family needs. They're just worried about, oh my gosh, my kid is missing school. I don't, what am I going to do? So that's kind of one of the first steps that we do. From there, then we would kind of look and explore and say, hey, maybe we need to look at a 504 plan, or maybe we need to look at having an evaluation for special education.
Okay, great.
Yeah, no, you described it perfectly. I know oftentimes parents, it's important to keep the two worlds separate.
Okay.
So the world of education, there's going to be lots of evaluations, and that's necessary for school. And then, of course, the medical world, we also get our diagnosis and evaluations with our physicians as well. I like to think of IEPs. Once I was told by a great teacher, an IEP is going to be more focused on the child's curriculum and if that curriculum needs to be modified. And then a 504 plan is going to be more so, accommodations that can be put into place for the child, but the curriculum stays put. It doesn't get modified.
So that's the main difference between the two?
For the most part, yeah.
So do you have any suggestions? You mentioned keeping those two worlds separate. I assume that's kind of hard to do sometimes. Do you have any suggestions for maybe navigating that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important to reach out for help, and that's why it's so wonderful that Phoenix Children's Hospital is here to help parents throughout that process, whether you're inpatient or outpatient. And then, of course, turning to Raising Special Kids can be great help to help them guide them.
Great. So you touched on this a little bit, but maybe you want to talk a little bit more about what the differences are between the 504 plans and the IEP plans?
So a 504 plan is a blueprint for how a child is going to have access to their education. And so that we can put some accommodations in place. It's not special education. So a 504 plan can be utilized for all kinds of diagnoses, and it would not be atypical. It could be, modifications could include like wearing earphones so that they, have more of a quiet space, having an open bathroom pass, sitting closer to the teacher, not traveling so far to get from class to class. There's all kinds of accommodations that are available. We have a 504 booklet here at PCH that we provide for families, and we will provide a list of specific accommodations that go with that diagnosis. Okay. So that's kind of how the 504 plan works. an IEP is called it's an individual education plan, which I believe you stated, and it falls under IDEA, which is the law that it falls under. It is special education.
Okay.
So it involves an evaluation. There are 13 categories for which you can qualify for special education, and there's a whole team of people that are part of the process.
Okay.
And what will sometimes happen is, what I would encourage a parent to do if they are concerned and feel like they're not getting enough support is to put in writing a letter that says, I would like to have my child evaluated. This is what I'm seeing. These are the concerns I have. These are the things that we've tried, and it hasn't seemed to make a difference, or it's not. We don't feel like it's enough. And then you want to give that to the school in writing, and that kind of starts the process for an IEP. And then the team will decide, okay, let's make some adoptions in the classroom and see if things improve. And if things don't improve, then they may choose to continue to do an evaluation. And from there, we'll see if the child can qualify in one of those 13 areas.
Great.
Yeah, I know definitely for a parent, being a parent myself,
Yeah.
when my daughter was evaluated at first, she didn't qualify for special education services. And I thought, what am I going to do now? How is she going to get help and support? And it was so important for me to learn that even if the child doesn't qualify for that IEP, a 504 plan can still tremendously help the child. Things that I learned, good accommodations that can be made for her and that were made for her were things like preferential seating, depending on where it was best for her to learn because of being distracted. She also had shortened homework assignments, which also helped a lot because especially for our heart kiddos, by the time you get to the end of the school day and you get home, they can often be just completely fatigued. And so having to then sit down and do the normal homework assignments that are assigned can often be very difficult. So that was really helpful for her as well. So 504s can help. Don't think that you're not going to get help if you don't get one.
So it's not IEP or nothing. There are other options. So we already have our first question from the audience. I think we mentioned a book, Megan. How can people just access this book? Can they contact your department for more information about that?
Absolutely. So you can contact Wender and Cool School at 602-933-1706. This is the book, and we can provide accommodations. If not for the book, I think you can also access it through the Emily Center.
Okay, which is our library here at the hospital.
So that would be another way to get that.
Great. So we'll put some of that information in the comments so that you don't have to remember everything. So kind of going back to what you were saying, cardiac patients, you may not think of them as patients who need special accommodations. I think a lot of people think of developmental disabilities are the ones who need these kind of special accommodations, but it's so much more than that. Can you talk a little bit about how many different kinds of conditions can be treated with this?
Sure.
Oh,
you can go.
Okay. we see kiddos here, obviously at PCH, with all kinds of various issues: illness, chronic illness, injury, critical injury, traumatic brain injuries. We kind of cover it all, and so we certainly sit through. Our team really focuses on that patient and what their needs are, and working with their school and their staff and family to kind of help guide them on this journey. And I often say to families, I can talk to you about this today, and we can talk about it again tomorrow, and we can talk about it again next week, because I know that they are so overwhelmed with so much going on, and I see that look. So sometimes the most important thing we do is give them a hug and say, and we're going to talk about it next week, and we'll be here when you're ready, because it's just so much information, and we get that. So we are a resource that can be used even after families leave the hospital. And rather frequently I'll get calls from families that just are, I'm ready to, ready, or now I'm ready to hear you more, because it's just so much information, and we certainly can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Right.
At Raising Special Kids, all of us that work there are parents ourselves of children with disabilities, so we can really empathize with the families that we're helping. We've lived it. I know you two have as well, Megan, and that's really important, and just letting parents know they're not alone. They don't need to figure this out by themselves. There's so much help and support out there for them.
Absolutely.
So do parents have to wait for the beginning of the school year to get one of these plans?
No. So anytime throughout the school year, a parent should be able to address their concerns with the school. And we would encourage that, and we can provide resources and even sample letters so that parents know how to kind of formulate their thoughts and their concerns to, encourage an evaluation for either a 504 or an IEP.
Yeah, one of the things that we often encourage parents to do is get it in writing. So a lot of times the parent will call school, and speak to the school psychologist or whoever works there, and we'll say, okay, I really want to have my child evaluated. That's fine, but make sure you follow up with that email in writing.
Sure. Because
that paper trail is what's going to start the timeline of the 60 days, that school has by law to do that.
Okay, so talk about that. They have 60 days from the request to follow up?
So they have 60 days from the request to do the evaluation
Okay.
and get back with the family, and then they have 30 days to get the IEP in place from that meeting.
Okay.
So we want to get that plan in place basically sooner rather than later, especially if we know the kid is struggling. Typically, schools will often move more quickly than that when they're able. It just
Okay.
depends on what their caseload looks like, but
Okay.
that's the legal timeline.
But it's an important thing for parents to know that they have
Yeah,
these
and
rights.
we have templates at
That's
Raising
great.
Special Kids, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel and figure out how to put together that email. We can actually share with you a template, then you can put in your child's information.
Perfect.
Send it on
So
over.
the best way to get a hold of those templates would be to contact
Raising Special Kids, yeah,
Okay.
and our phone number is 602-242-4366.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so who creates an IEP and a 504 plan or a 504 plan?
So a lot of the same people
Okay.
are on both teams, but there's typically a 504 coordinator at a school. So it would
Okay.
be a 504 coordinator. The parent is involved. The teacher can be involved. An IEP has kind of a larger team that really needs to be involved. It's just usually the school psychologist or someone who
Okay.
evaluates. Of course, the parent, the teacher, at least one special education teacher, sometimes more than one. Any of the therapists, so if there's physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, they would be involved.
Okay.
So it can be a big room of people. And one of the things that we provide here at PCH is when it's appropriate and necessary, we can either attend by phone conference or physically go attend a 504 or an IEP meeting for one of our patients. And we certainly all do that so that we can help. Sometimes a family just feels like they need some extra support or they want someone to be there to hear the same questions and make sure everything is addressed. And we are happy to do that. And we certainly will do that.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
So, you've both kind of talked about what roles you play in this process, but, is there, looking out to these parents here who may be talking to you or meeting with you, what is your expectation of your role in this process?
So our role kind of starts typically when a patient arrives at PCH and there are school concerns. So there's a couple ways that is brought to our attention. One, a consult may be put in to the system, and that is by typically a physician or a social worker, and they will let us know, hey, we have concerns, or this family needs support with reentry or transitioning back to school, or this kiddo's missed 3 weeks of school and they're worried. Or a family can just say to one of the staff members, hey, we're concerned about school, and then they'll get in touch with us.
Okay.
By the 5th day that a family and patient are here, we make it a point to visit, to check in, and we call it a meet and greet, where we just say, hey, we're here. We provide school services. We let them know what we do, and if they have questions or concerns, they can certainly ask us, and we'd be happy to and that's the beginning of the process.
Sure.
And then, as you can imagine, some things are really complex because we may not even know what the diagnosis is. So
Right.
part of what we're doing is trying to, we're on this journey with them and we're trying to figure out. So it may just be in the beginning that we get in touch with the school and let them know that they're hospitalized, that they're being evaluated, that we're not sure. And as time goes on and a treatment plan is made, we sit in as part of the team along with the physicians, social workers, dietitians. We are part of the multidisciplinary team, and so we sit in and we're all hearing the same thing, and we can talk about it together and kind of formulate the best plan for that particular patient.
Right.
Yeah, similar help with what we can, do and offer families. So basically, at Raising Special Kids, we're what's called the Parent Training and Information Center for Arizona. Fancy name. And what that means basically is that we're here to help educate parents on the whole process and how it works and what's available to them out here. And one of the things that we also provide, just like PCH, is being able to go with the parent to the IEP school meeting, and we can go ahead and it's called an IEP partner for them. We don't charge for any of our services.
Oh, that's great.
And if anybody needs someone to help them in Spanish, we can do that. So we, have Spanish and English staff members that can go ahead and help the families with whatever they need.
That's great. So we have a couple more questions from our viewers. Should a parent contact you first or discuss with the doctor, I assume, about getting these kinds of plans in place?
So that's a good question, and I think that it kind of depends on the situation, because sometimes, like I was saying earlier, we're kind of waiting for information from the physician or the physician team to know what direction we're going, so that we know how to best support a patient. For example, sometimes we don't know how long the patient is going to be out of school. So we would tailor what we're going to do depending on, are they going to be out just another week, or are they going to be out for 2 months or 3 months? So that's part of what we're waiting for. So it can be either way. You can always come to us and ask us, and if we aren't sure, that's certainly something I would and have said to families frequently is, hey, I need to talk to the physician team first, because I'm not sure what the plan is, so that we can come up with something together.
Yeah,
Great.
options too. We could both provide the family options. So whether they choose public school, if they want to choose a charter school, if they want to choose a private special needs school, or homeschooling even, we can go ahead and help them through that. I know when my child had to stay at home after surgery, homebound schooling services was really helpful to understand that, and PCH was a tremendous support with that.
Great. That's great. So do you have to qualify for a 504 plan before you consider an IEP? It's a good question, I think.
Very good question, and no, you don't. So I would say an IEP trumps the 504. So if, say for example, you have a 504 plan, and then you're going along and you realize, wow, things took a different turn and we need more support than even we're getting in the 504. We want to have our child evaluated. Then, if they qualify for an IEP, whatever was in the 504 would then be built into the IEP.
Oh, great. So it can help the IEP.
Right, but you wouldn't have both. You would have one or the other.
And you wouldn't necessarily need a 504 plan to get an IEP.
No.
Right.
No.
Okay. How can you qualify for an aide in the classroom? I assume having an aide in the classroom.
Oh, that's a good question. Do you
That's a
want to
good
take
one.
that?
No, you can.
So because I don't work in the public school in the classroom, I don't know the ins and outs of this super well, but I certainly talk to families who have had to advocate and fight to get a one-on-one aide, and that's a conversation that we do have somewhat frequently here. So I think that my number one piece of advice always is, from the get-go, communicate with the school. So I will tell families, all these things that you're asking me, this is great, but I want you to write them down. Because even if we go meet at the school, I want to make sure we address everything. You have every right as a parent to go sit down with the school team and say, look, these are my concerns. These are my questions. These are the things that I don't think are getting addressed and need to be addressed. So that is, I would empower families to ask the questions, communicate, request meetings. Don't stop until you kind of feel like things have been addressed. And we are a great resource, as is Raising Special Kids.
Yeah, it's not my area of expertise. That's why I had you answer. But I know definitely in general. So an aide, it's a team decision.
Okay.
It's going to help tremendously the information that you have from your physician regarding your child's diagnosis and exactly what are the goals and why is it that your child needs that one-on-one aide. And it's something that is provided and paid for by the school.
Okay.
If they're found, that yes, that your child is eligible to have one.
So it probably varies from district to district as to what the requirements are, things like that, I assume.
It's pretty across the board.
Across the board, okay.
Generally, yeah, but it's going to be very individual to the child and what's going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about reentry. What is reentry?
So reentry is that transition from hospital back to school.
Okay.
So and it often begins while the child is still hospitalized.
Okay.
But when we're looking at sending a child home and we're not sure, maybe the school support needs to change. So maybe they need to go now on homebound and receive homebound education, or they want to look at an alternative setting or something where you can recover credits. That comes up a lot. So if we have high school kids and they're behind in their credits, they want to look at, how can I get my credit recovery more quickly so that I can move through and still graduate with my friends on time. So these are all the kinds of things that we cover, and it's really just that transition piece from hospital back to school support, whatever that may be.
Okay. And that might not even mean an IEP or a 504.
It
might
may
just be
a good majority of the
in.
time. Right, a good majority of the time it doesn't necessarily include an IEP or a 504.
Got it.
It will typically include a chronic illness form if it's a chronic illness.
Definitely. I think we have another question.
Oh, we do. Okay, so what are some common accommodations heart patients can benefit from?
My favorite one was when I heard a patient speak, and she talked about the difficulty that she had. She was a heart she has a heart condition, getting from classroom to classroom, and it was difficult to keep on schedule. And sometimes, she needed to let the teacher know that she needed a little bit of extra time because physically it was difficult and exhausting. And unfortunately, the teacher didn't really understand. The teacher thought she was trying to get out of class. And that's something that definitely kids that have heart conditions can get accommodations, if they need some more time to get to class. My daughter uses a wheelchair. She has spina bifida, and that's something that we definitely had to write into her 504 plan. Not only does she need assistance getting in and out, to the different classrooms, she also has to go to the nurse a couple times a day to catheterize. And that was something that she would obviously miss a little bit of class time. So that was something that had to be scheduled and worked out, and the teachers are very supportive and understand.
That's what I was going to say, too. I'm sure not every situation is perfect. How do you counsel parents who may be struggling to explain to their teachers what is going on and why they need these accommodations?
Yeah, I think it's important to know that the teacher may not know exactly how that diagnosis affects your child personally. Even if the teacher is very familiar with the diagnosis, how it affects your child is what you need to let them know and inform them about. Information is powerful. They're often very willing to help and support. It's just a matter of understanding what's going on.
Sure.
And I will say, in my own personal experience with having a child with a chronic illness, one thing that I do every year, even as a mom, is I go meet with the school team, and that includes anybody who is, her teacher, her special teachers, the after-school program, because she goes to the after-school program, and I give them a little PowerPoint, because imagine that. So I provide pictures, and I go over, because on the outside she looks very typical like any other kid, but on the inside what's going on when she is having a reaction looks very different. So I show them pictures of what the inside, what her esophagus looks like, and kind of walk through what specifically, how she gets, I call it, she gets funky, but she gets, she just kind of, you see these changes in her, and that's often because she's so inflamed on the inside. So I sit down with everybody, and it seems to have worked well, and just now she's starting to get to the point where maybe next year she would like to do that with me, she's told me, or talk to her peers about it. The other thing that we can do here at PCH is we will sometimes partner with Child Life and go out to a school and help kids, the peers, understand a diagnosis. So, for example, if you were diagnosed with cancer and you were coming back with no hair, kids tend to have lots of questions. So one of the things that we could do is go and partner with a child life specialist, and we can talk about the fact, what leukemia is, or whatever the diagnosis is, and you can't catch it, and how to be a good friend, and don't come to school when you're sick, and please wash your hands, and maybe you can help carry your friend's backpack, and when they're really little, they're super cute, and they always raise their hand, and they're like, oh, I want to carry the backpack, no, I'll do it. So it's very sweet, and that's a good way to help peers understand, because there's lots of questions, of course.
Sure. And maybe in case people don't know, can you explain what a child life specialist is?
Sure. So a child life specialist is the other magical position here at PCH that is, falls under patient and family services, and really is a way for kids to help understand their diagnosis and cope with their diagnosis. So they provide coping and explanation that's child-friendly and appropriate, helps a family understand. It works with siblings. I mean, they do the most amazing work, and we're so lucky to be able to partner with them, because I think that really helps support our patients and families best.
Those child life specialists can get our kids to do things that we could
They're magical.
never get them to do.
They are.
Yeah, I remember one time when Annie was in the hospital, and she just, she didn't feel well. She was hurting after surgery, and we really couldn't get her to reach her goals and do what she was supposed to do. And they came in with one of the pet therapy dogs, and it was over. She did everything she was asked to do.
I know.
They're really amazing.
Those pet therapy dogs get me to do things.
I know. They're magical,
Get
too.
to come and work. Yeah. So it looks like we have a few more questions. Are there resources for inpatient children to help them keep up with schoolwork?
Oh, such a good question. And yes, so we are here to help support families while they are inpatient.
Okay.
A good majority of what we do has a lot to do with that reentry piece, But we are here, and we also have lovely volunteers who are all certified teachers, and a lot of them are retired or taking a break from teaching, and so they go out and help us too with bedside support or classroom support. So kids can come here in the classroom if they want to have support that way, or we can go support them bedside. We will help request schoolwork from the school, and if while we're waiting, we have access to lots of curriculum, which the kids just love. No, they do love it most of the time, but we have plenty of curriculum here so that we don't have to wait for their school to send it over and keep them going and keep them engaged.
Yeah, having that teacher come into the room took that, pressure off of me. So I could just be mom and could just comfort her. And when the teacher came in, I remember Annie wasn't really, she didn't really embrace it at first. She was kind of thinking, I don't want to do schoolwork.
Right, on top of everything else, yeah.
But then once, I remember they brought her down here to One Darn Cool School. And as soon as they told her that she could go ahead and do her homework and make some Monopoly money and then go shopping in the toy closet, she was sold. And then every day it was, I want to go to school. I want to go to school. I said, okay, great.
That's great.
That happens a lot.
Yeah. So is there an education option for the school nurse to learn how to take care of these kids? So maybe an education learning about more stuff. Do we have resources, anything like that?
Absolutely. We have a lot of resources. Again, we have the Emily Center, which is a fabulous resource for illness and diagnosis. And I think between the school team, Child Life, and parents who typically know best how they're, like your daughter has to be cathed, and training the nurse on how to do that. We have lots of resources to be able to support families that way.
Yeah, just a quick shout out to the Emily Center. Our research nurses are unbelievable. A lot of parents don't realize that you don't even have to be inpatient. You can be at home and you can go ahead and call the Emily Center, and the research nurses can go ahead and do research on whatever it is that you want more information on, a procedure, an upcoming surgery, and they will go ahead and put together a comprehensive packet so you can spend the time with your child and not surfing the internet mindlessly. Yeah.
Right. So for those of you who don't know, the Emily Center is mostly online, so you can find them through our website with all their resources. And if you've never been there, they are on the first floor of our hospital, so please stop by the next time you're around. So we just have a few more minutes, but we will try to get to a few more questions. Excuse me. So what is the chronic illness form, and how is it used?
Okay. So the chronic illness form is that form that I talked about in the very beginning where we say, hey, it looks like this is going to be an ongoing issue. Potentially this child may be hospitalized again in the future or just have to miss school due to this illness. So we need to have documentation from the physician. So that's what it is. And typically although PCH, we do have a chronic illness form, I always suggest to families that they get their form from their school because schools like their own forms. And so if we do it and I have the physician complete it and then I have to go back and say, oh, I need to do it again, they don't really love that. So I try to always encourage families to get the chronic illness form from their school, provide it to the physician completes it, signs it, and you should make a copy. As the parent, you should always have a copy of anything like that you give. Keep a copy at home, and a copy is on file at the school. And so if you have to call your child in for an absence related to the illness, that chronic illness form should cover them, and so that they, aren't dropped after 10 days of missed school, which is one of the things that happens, and we hear that a lot. That's super stressful for families. And also so that they have adequate time to make up the work that they missed because they were sick.
Sure. So we've talked about it throughout, but what resources are available going forward? Someone watches this, they want to know how to find out more. Where can they go?
So you can always come find us here at One Darn Cool School. You can call us again at 602-933-1706.
Oh, wow.
And you can certainly have a physician or social worker request a consult if you feel like you want to reach one of us in the hospital. You can come to the classroom and check in with us. We have this lovely 504 book again that goes through and talks about starting the process and walks you all the way through, which is lovely and helpful for lots of families. We also have it in Spanish, and any of us are more than happy to help if you just find out who we each cover. We kind of all specialize in an area. So like I cover nephrology, and we have a teacher who covers cancer and blood disorders, a teacher who covers GI, a teacher who covers rehab. So we really specialize so that we know those diagnoses better.
Sure.
So please feel free to reach out to us at any time. We're happy to help.
Yeah, same with raising special kids. Parents can reach out to us at any point. You don't need to have a diagnosis for your child. You can simply be concerned, needing more information, not knowing exactly where to start, and we can certainly help from there. And we can explain not only the special education system, but also healthcare. Explain to parents what your child is eligible for, how to apply, what happens if you get denied, all that fun stuff.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot of information, that's for sure. So that's wonderful. So I think we have one last question. We're squeezing one more in.
Homeschool.
We're reading it as she's writing. Sorry. Can homeschool kids go to one darn cool school?
Oh, yes. Well, so I'm not sure. I will qualify this and say, if a child is hospitalized and they are homeschooled, absolutely, they can come to school with us while they were hospitalized. A child who is homeschooled, unfortunately, cannot come to One Darn Cool School as supplementary school.
Right.
Unfortunately, we certainly have had many families over the years ask us for that, and we would love to be able to provide that. But we are very full here with our inpatient crowd. So, but if you homeschool your child, absolutely, we have lots of families that homeschool, and their kids come and work with us, or we work with them in the class.
And your child who's homeschooled can definitely get evaluated by the public school system. So you can certainly receive special education services at the homeschool, even if your child is homeschooled.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
that's great to know. Well, thank you so much for joining us. As always, leave your questions in the comments. We will send them to these ladies and try to get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Nanette. And we will see you next time.